Most of you will remember last year when Golden Gate Ventures announced its $100 million MENA fund. And there was a story before that. It took a while before you really decided to come here. Yeah. Very courageous that you came. But can you tell us a little bit on how that journey went since last year? You announced the fund. You promised that you would come and live here with your family. Yeah. Please explain.
Yeah, and thank you all for having me. It's amazing to see so many friends coming to Doha, Qatar, for the Qatar Economic Forum. So thanks to our partners at QFC, and thanks to Bloomberg for having us. A lot has happened in the past year, I would say, and you're right. We did promise that we would be here. We promised we would open up our office. We promised to have our family move here as well. That all happened. My lovely wife, who's in the back in the room, and our two kids are here now. They are in school. They have a lot of homework. They complain to dad and mom quite often. But the journey's been phenomenal. I can remember us being in the other room announcing our fund with our anchor partners, 3 Qatari families that supported the fund. And the biggest question we got back then was, why Qatar? Why would you set up your fund here? Why would you structure here? And our answer was like, if you look at, again, I've said this over and over, if you look at the infrastructure, if you look at what is happening, and if you can forward look 10 years in time, how the venture capital ecosystem would look like, Qatar made a lot of sense for us. So we decided to put our money where our mouth is, launch the fund, and also make our first investments. It's been an incredible journey over the past year.
Fantastic. And your fund is nearly closed, I believe.
We're almost done. But if you want to sign up, no, just kidding.
So there's still room to participate in the fund. Yeah, so you came from Singapore, where you guys set up a very successful hub for venture capital. So what are the key differences if you compare doing business in Southeast Asia to business in Qatar? And are there any unexpected sort of surprises that you came across?
Yeah, so we our fund in Singapore, where we've launched in 2011, made over 107 investments across the Southeast Asian market. Oftentimes we look at Singapore as the example and in how they grew the venture capital ecosystem. And I keep forgetting the number, but I think there's over 300 venture capital funds in Singapore itself, if you combine CVCs and angel syndicates. So Singapore is often seen as an example. And I do remember discussions with my partner Vinny, who's here as well, Hussein, of course, when we looked at what does Singapore look like and what does Qatar look like. I'd say the biggest comparison is you build here, but you build from here, and you kind of build for the region. It was very, very similar to Singapore, so that was kind of a similarity. I think what surprised us was the level of relationship building. I'd say Singapore is a bit more transactional. You can kind of go into a meeting, a few coffees, and it's a handshake and it's a yes or no. The yes or no took a bit longer here. So it took more time in terms of relationship building, trust building. But I think in the end, what really worked out was the strategy between the two markets. If you look at companies that come from Southeast Asia and are now looking to come here organically because they see the hub function of the region, they see the hub function of Qatar. I think the only thing that was a big surprise for us was the amount of coffee meetings we had. I think the level of collaboration, and this was a pleasant surprise, the level of collaboration between the different ecosystem players, government, private, was a pleasant surprise. The fact that after a year launching, you and I are sitting here on stage is a testament to that.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, I think to the audience that doesn't know Qatar, we are like a global village, and it's easy to build up relations. Yeah. But it has to come from two sides. So anyway, you were on the ground. Then how would you describe the sort of innovation culture and the ecosystem here to people that may also have plans like you coming to set up their venture studio or venture capital firm?
Yeah, I think you want to look at being in Qatar as in using it as a hub function. Our team is traveling all the time, and glad that we are here this week. But the way we view it is when you look at launching here, the very first question you get as a company, as a founder, as a VC manager is, the market is so small, why are you here? But you have to look at the bigger picture. You can bring innovation here. So I'll give one example. Together with Qatar Development Bank, QDB, we co-invested in a company in Oman. The company has brought their R&D to Qatar. So you should really think about how can we combine talent, again, the hub function, Qatar's infrastructure. You can think of QSTP, you can think of QRDI, you think of QFC. The amount of meetings we have as a fund manager with all the stakeholders on a very regular basis showcases that we can put in $1 into a company, but it doesn't necessarily get the company to where it needs to be. You need all the actors in place. So in this case, the Omani company was able to land here and then work with all the local stakeholders to bring talent to Qatar. That for us is invaluable. Again, you can't buy this with money. So you need the infrastructure to work. So if you are considering to opening up shop here, either as a founder or as a fund manager, you're able to leverage that ecosystem and get your companies, your investments to the next stage.
Yeah, thank you. As Qatar, obviously we would like people to bring their portfolio companies and be successful as Michael describes, but anything on the innovation culture here locally? So, and do you see that happening? Is there enough talent available in Qatar itself?
Yeah, so the thing is, there's a few things I can speak to. If you look at the eagerness of young talent, specifically within the universities, I think that really excites us. Yeah. We've had a number of sessions where within the different universities where we look at idea stage projects. All of them want to become entrepreneurs. And in all fairness, you might see 100 ideas and 10 of them are viable, but that's fine. Those 10, if one of them becomes a successful company, we've kind of hit our mark. So I think that is one, kind of working with the universities. I do believe it is a combination of bringing talent here that wants to be here and stay here, and working with local talent. I think that is the formula to get Qatar sort of to the next stage from an innovation standpoint. But there's a lot of assets here. Look at Ooredoo, look at Qatar Energy, look at the manufacturing experience you have here on the ground. Leverage all of these industries to innovate and transform faster. So I think that is where Qatar positions itself very uniquely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think for the audience, we have some great Qatari companies leading in the region and even beyond, and there are more than 30 universities. I think that combination brings indeed that innovative culture and talent. So last question, Michael. So is there, obviously you're traveling around in MENA, and your fund is not only MENA, but from MENA. So what do you think in terms of what are the sectors that you see can be disrupted here? And then maybe a question for later, since we're all in a relatively nascent state, how do you see the exit strategies for venture capital investments?
Yeah, when I hear the word disruption now, and I'm getting slightly older, so we're kind of nuancing ourselves a little bit. I think we should talk about transformation more than disruption. I can still remember, 15 years ago when we looked at sort of earlier fintech companies, and we're always saying we're going to disrupt the banks. The banks are still here. Yeah. The banks still very much look the same like they did 10, 15 years ago, although there is innovation. So I'd rather talk about transformation, and I'm very keen to see how, or we're seeing that effectively already, how data, obviously AI, are transforming industries, whether it is oil and gas or energy, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is food security, whether it is supply chain. That really excites us from a transformation standpoint. And then to your question about exits, I think in the past few years, the magic word is liquidity for us fund managers. The exit markets will remain challenging for a little bit. I think, and we discussed this a few days ago, where stock exchanges across the region can play a bigger role in allowing companies at an earlier stage, and maybe not all being profitable from the last 3 years, to list. It provides more liquidity for earlier investors. I do believe that we're hoping that secondaries are also going to play a bigger role here in the region, which allows for angel investors and seed investors to get some liquidity so that we can reinvest. We're coming off of 2-3 very, very tough years. Our view is that with how technology at present is really reimagining certain industries, we're going to see some very big outcomes. And I want to say one thing though. We often say that companies from here are for the local economy or for the regional economy. I want to challenge that thinking. I think companies from here are going to be more and more playing a role on the global scale, and I think that's where the true exits are going to come from.
Well, I think those are very promising words of a very experienced venture capitalist. So there is a room locally, but there is room for growth beyond. And I would like to tell the audience that if you have plans to set up your venture studio or your venture capital firm here, please come to us, we'll help you. Big applause for Michael and Hussein Abdullah for Golden Gate Ventures.